Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Ready to Die Fighting. I'm Kris, and today we're talking about the four things that you need to survive whatever it is. The event. Let's call it the event. It could be zombies. It could be a nuclear attack, a hurricane, or it could just be a flat tire on the side of the road. Four things are going to help you regardless of what that event is. And the thing here that I want you to keep in mind is you don't actually want... I talk about a lot survival. I talk about survival a lot. But you don't actually want to survive. That sounds counterintuitive, right? Because if you think about what survival is, it's just not dying, really. You could be horrifically burned over 3/4 of your body. Just burn all the skin off and survive. You could be paralyzed from the neck down and need to wear a colostomy bag for the rest of your life. Have severe PTSD, but hey, you survived. Surviving is not all that great. You want to win. That's what they told me in my CPL course. The instructor, he talked at length about winning. He was talking specifically about a gunfight. But it made a lot of sense. I was like, you don't want to just survive it. Surviving is garbage. Surviving is just barely scraping by. If you win, then you are victorious over your opponent or your adversary or this adverse condition. Victorious. That sounds a lot better. That sounds more like, I mean, and I guess you can have some wins where you just barely defeat someone. But when you think of victory, when you think of winning, it's like you come out on top, like you did good. Like the way me and my mom used to say it is we used to play this video game and we'd always talk about we don't want to just survive the apocalypse. We want to thrive in the apocalypse. And so I want you to keep that type of mentality. Like, we're not just trying to survive here. You can survive by accident. People survive by coincidence and chance all the time. We want to thrive. We want to win. We want to be victorious over whatever this event is. And you're probably not going to do that without some preparation. And that's really the point of prepping, right? Is to not just scrape by and put your chances, take it to chance. It's making a plan, acquiring some skills, acquiring some gear, and having the knowledge to do what you need to do to survive and excel. And there are your four things that you need. You need knowledge, you need skills / conditioning. Oh, the sun went away. Let me turn a light on, I guess. We were getting some sunlight in. What happened? Much better. All right, so as I was saying before the sun so rudely interrupted me, you need knowledge, you need skills or conditioning, you need gear, and you need a plan. And that is going to help you for pretty much anything life throws at you. Pretty much anything. Now, I guess I could argue that skills and knowledge are very similar, but I lump it with conditioning. Skills could also maybe stand on its own, but I think it fits with conditioning well enough. But let's say knowledge. Let's just start with knowledge first. That's the first one. And these aren't necessarily in order of importance. I think they're all important, extremely important. You need all of them. They aren't all equal, though. I do think some are more important than others, but you still need them all. So, knowledge. That's going to be, you know what knowledge is. I don't know if I really need to explain why knowledge is important, but I will anyway. Having the knowledge of, let's say, for example, identifying edible plants from non-edible plants. Knowing what to do in various emergencies. Say there's a fire. What do you do about a fire? stop, drop, and roll. We all learned that as kids. Crawl, don't walk, don't run. You want to crawl, you want to get low to avoid smoke inhalation. These aren't necessarily skills you need to acquire. You just need to know this stuff. Well, plant identification, I guess, probably is more of a skill. Knowing if you have a bunch of different tools or different types of knives and axes and saws, knowing which one is best for which circumstances, knowing which type of oil goes into which type of motor or vehicle or whatever, knowing all these different things. I was trying to think of something first aid related. I don't know. Knowing which type of bandage works best with different types of injuries. Or probably more importantly, knowing when it's something that you can actually help someone with, or knowing that's they're a lost cause. I'm not even going to waste my time. That's a kind of a cruel way to think of it, but that is the reality of it, especially depending on what type of situation we're in. If there's multiple injured people, and say the guy over there is bleeding out and only has a few seconds to live, and you could potentially save him, but you're wasting time on someone who really, just due to their injuries, they're either already dead and you don't know it, or there's no way they're going to survive it. Let them go and go to the person who you can actually help. Of course, if the person who's dying is someone that you love and care about, that may be hard to do, but realistically, save the people you can. Just having that knowledge in and of itself, that's not necessarily a skill at this point. Maybe it's a skill to be able to truly identify that thing, but having the knowledge that that's the course of action that you should take is pretty useful to know, and could potentially help save some lives. And then it kind of segues over into skills and conditioning. And I separate knowledge away from skills, even though the two really do go really well together. I could definitely make the argument of how they're together, but I consider knowledge as the information, the database, a book, an encyclopedia, and skills is applied knowledge. So for example, fire building. When I first started getting serious about prepping a few years ago, I watched a bunch of videos on how to build a fire with a fire steel and wood shavings. I watched so many videos, and it looks really easy. You saw these guys doing it hundreds of times without any problem. I'm like, oh, I can do that, no problem. Slice my little wood shavings, get my fire steel, scrape it, sparks, I got a flame. Easy peasy. Bought myself a fire steel, got a knife, threw it in my bag, good to go. So I thought. And then after some point, I'm like, let me test this out. It looks fun. I got nothing to do right now. See how this is going to be awesome. Watch this fire I'm going to make. Did not make a fire that day. I did not make a fire that day. I did not make a fire the next day. I did not make a fire the day after that. I don't remember how many days it took, but it took several days before I was able to make one small fire with a fire steel and wood shavings. I either was not cutting the wood shavings to, the right size and thickness, or I didn't have enough of them, or I wasn't making enough sparks, or I was holding the fire steel too far away, or I would start to get a fire, then I'd get excited and somehow I'd smother it or something by trying to put more stuff on top of it too quickly. Just whatever. But I could not get a fire going for days. If my life depended on it, I would have died from hypothermia or whatever it was. If I was trying to cook or purify some water, it wasn't going to happen. So thank goodness I pulled that stuff out of the bag and learned how to do it. Since then, fast forward a few years, I've made, I don't even know how many fires. It could be windy, it could be cold. I've never done it in just flat out rain, but certainly wettish conditions. And it's definitely a skill that I have now. I can consistently, confidently make a fire with a fire steel and shavings. Fantastic. So there is a big difference between knowledge. I had the knowledge of how to make a fire with fire steel, and a skill. So now it's a skill set. And so I consider that conditioning, and I'm lumping it together. Even though conditioning is usually thought of as like physical fitness conditioning, it is a matter of muscle memory and mental conditioning and physical conditioning to be able to do that. Lock picking is another example. I can explain to you how locks work. You can use the terminology. I know what tools you need. I know the process that happens. I do not have the skill of not consistently picking locks. I'm terrible at it. I have not conditioned my mind, my ears, my eyes to be able to identify the different types of locks and what techniques I should use, which pick I should use, even having a feel of how much pressure to put on the wrench and feeling the pins moving around as I'm picking at them. I haven't conditioned my body to be good at that, not consistently. And so even though I have the knowledge, I don't have the skills. I don't have the conditioning for it. Something that this channel focuses on is the physical side of it, being able to get into a fight potentially and have enough conditioning to finish that fight, to be able to carry your backpack however far you need to be able to carry it. Having a big jug of water, I've got a 7-gallon aquatainer for water, and I do farmer carries with that probably once a week just to make sure that I can carry that when I need to. What's the point in having this big container of water, and if I can't go to a river or pond or a FEMA station or whatever to get water? You know, I can carry it empty, but if I can't carry it full, what good is that to me? If I need to evacuate and want to take the water with me, what good is it if I can't carry it? So conditioning is super, super important, and really the main focus of this channel, and the thing that I personally focus the most on is part of my prepping at this point. A few years ago, even I would say maybe a year ago, I would say 2 years ago, my main focus was acquiring gear, which leads us to 3. Gear. The interesting thing about gear is it has an inverse relationship with skills. So the higher or greater your skill set, the less gear you need. The lower the skills you have, the more gear you need. So that being said, I would say the ideal point to be is maybe here, have a slightly higher skill set, need a little bit less gear, but then also acquire more skills and have that gear as a backup. So, I mean, just because you get more skills doesn't mean you throw away your gear, but you don't have to depend on it as much. But that being said, having the right gear can make all the difference in the world, I've found. I have bought cheap, crappy gear, and then I bought nicer stuff, and there is a big difference. This is my toolbox, and this isn't like a prepper toolbox or anything like that. I'm a homeowner. I'm a car owner. Things break, things go wrong, and basically I found that having nice tools make a big difference. Something I just learned along the way. And so whenever something breaks around the house, or we're doing a science project or some arts and crafts or whatever, tools come in really handy. And I've learned over the years, having the right tool can make all the difference. A lot of times when you're hiring, I shouldn't say a lot of times, I don't want to downplay the skills and knowledge that professionals have. That's not at all my intention. I think there is a big difference between hiring a professional electrician versus some hack who's just hobbling things together, who has the right tools. That's not what I'm trying to imply. But I have noticed when you go by just having a specialized tool and having something that's, that can get the job done, can make a huge difference in not only the amount of time that it takes to perform a task or to do a job, but it also makes it safer, and you can get better results, and they usually will last longer. So that's why I have this, because every time I need to do something, I go buy the right tools that I need. Now, realistically, as you acquire more skills and as you're more knowledgeable, you have a better chance of being able to cobble something together and making it work right and work well for you. with having higher knowledge, or you can build whatever it is you need, or you're just going to be more proficient with the tools that you do have. So definitely having gear isn't a bad thing. Having a bunch of gear, I'm not trying to imply that, but higher skill level means you need less. And where that is important is when we're talking about bug out bags, evacuation bags, what you can carry on you. If you have a bug out bag that weighs 50 pounds because you have to carry everything because you don't have very many skills, that's going to be a problem. If you can take off with a 16-pound bug out bag because all it has in it is some food and water and a knife, a little bit of cordage, you're going to be really good. You're going to be able to move very fast, very far without a whole lot of effort because you're carrying such a light bag. And that can make a big, now those are big extremes. Maybe you want to be someplace in the middle, but there's definitely something to be said with ultra light backpacks and light gear. So the takeaway there is, and I kind of rambled a little bit, but try to minimize the amount of gear that you need. Focus more on skill acquisition, have gear as needed, and invest in quality stuff. It's going to make all the difference in the world, especially if your life is depending on it. If your life is depending on it, don't go cheap. Don't buy the most expensive for no reason, because most expensive doesn't always mean the best. But do your research, get good gear. Don't cheap out on gear. Buy the good stuff that you need for your skills, for your interest, for your abilities, and pack that, carry that, use it, practice with it, understand it, know how to fix it, how to maintain it. Really focus on that gear and make sure it's going to work for you when you depend on it. And the last thing is planning. Planning is kind of funny because planning is important, but as a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in my Krav Maga class is, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So just be aware that that plan is probably going to change. That doesn't mean don't have a plan. Just in creating a plan in and of itself, you're going to think through what could happen, what you should do, what you're going to need, where you're going to go. And during that process, you're probably going to get some gear. You're probably going to get some new skills. You're probably going to make some connections and build relationships with other people who you may need or want to have around you to help you out execute that plan. So all of that, I think that part of it is actually more important than the plan itself. Plan almost doesn't even matter. You could have a beautiful bug out shelter out in the mountains someplace. It's completely secluded, 10 miles deep into the ground with everything you need, and then the shit hits the fan, and let's say it's an earthquake and that is now inaccessible, or the mountain turned into a volcano, didn't see that coming, and your shelter is now buried in lava, or you just can't get to it for other reasons. Then that plan is worthless. You don't have a plan anymore. What are you going to do? Planning is important, but chances are your plan's going to change, and being adaptable, being able to think on your feet, and flexible is probably more important than that. Even if the plan goes completely in the garbage, and it may very well, it probably will. Chances are things aren't going to go to plan. If everything went to plan, there would be no shit hitting the fan, right? Nobody's planning for that. That's going to happen because things aren't going to plan. Develop a plan, though, especially if you have people that you care about who may be in different places. You guys want to have, at the very least, a bare minimum, some sort of communication plan. Some sort of way that you guys can talk to each other, or a place where you're going to meet up, or whatever the case may be, so that you can be with your loved ones. I would say at the absolute minimum, that's the plan that you want to have. Anything outside of that, I don't know. It'll probably change, and that's because there's no way of knowing. We don't know when it's going to happen, what's going to happen, if it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. How can you make a plan for that? So have some plans, have contingency plans and backup plans and, all sorts of what if side plans, but just know that it's probably going to change and be flexible and adaptable. So what's the takeaway here? All of these things are important. Planning, gear, skills, knowledge, all important stuff. I wouldn't say that they're all equal. Especially if you're a beginning prepper, you got to do all of it. I don't know if I could pick one, especially for a beginner. You really got to do all of it. But let's just say you just started prepping. Your most important thing is probably knowledge that you need to start acquiring. You need to do some serious assessment of what you already know, what your skills and assets already are, and do a honest assessment of that. I guess maybe planning is first. Yeah, plan first. Figure out what, because that is part of planning, right? Figuring out what you know, what you have, what's the most likely disaster you're going to encounter. I did another video a few weeks ago prioritizing different disasters, like what's most likely going to happen. What's most likely going to happen, what can you do to prepare for it, and what was it? No, what's the disaster, what's the likelihood, and what you can do to prepare for it, and kind of doing a risk assessment based off of that, and make some decisions there. After you know what you're preparing for and what you already know, what you have to offer, the other side is also knowing where you're weak. I don't know how to hunt or trap food. So if things went south, even though I have some firearms, I don't know how successful I'd be in finding an animal and killing it. I don't know, because I've never gone hunting before. I've never trapped. I've never gone fishing. That's definitely some skills that I need to grow in. So you got to be honest about this type of stuff. Where are you short? And then start learning there. Building up some gear, building up the skills to go along with it. So I guess planning really is the beginning stage. And then probably knowledge, because you need to know what you need, right? It's hard to, you could just start buying stuff and start taking classes and kind of just doing it arbitrarily and not really understanding it. But that's kind of wasting money and energy and all that. You should probably do some research first and build your knowledge base so that you know what you need and know what you need to learn. And then you can start doing that other stuff. Although gear, a lot of times, there is a lot of gear and supplies. If we were to extend that, you probably don't need a whole lot of knowledge to stock up on water. You probably just start buying bottles of water. You probably just start buying canned foods and things like that. If I extend gear to not be just tools and gear, but supplies in general, which wasn't my initial thought. I was thinking more tools. But yeah, you could probably just start stocking up on the basic necessities: first aid supplies, water, food. If you have medical needs that, I don't know, certain medicines or things like that you know you're going to need, start stocking up on that if you can. I know that's tricky with prescriptions, but if you can do it, do it. I would make that a pretty high priority, actually, especially depending on what your medical needs are. That may be a very high priority if things go bad and that medicine is unavailable to you for a certain amount of time. So that's probably where I start, coming up with a plan, and then building some knowledge while you're at the same time you can start building your stock. And once you've figured out where you need to start skill building, start skill building. Physical fitness, I think that can fall in with supply building as well. It's like you don't have to really plan a whole lot. Just start doing some cardio, start doing some push-ups. Doesn't really matter. Any exercise is good exercise as far as I'm concerned. As long as you're moving your body and getting your body stronger and used to movement, you're going to improve. You're going to feel better. You're going to be better equipped to deal with this stuff and be healthier. So just start buying some supplies, start exercising, and start planning. And from there, you'll start figuring out what exactly you need. Because I can't tell you that. I don't know. I don't know what skills you already have. And the skills that you need may be different for your environment. Urban skills are very different from rural skills, which are going to be very different from urban or rural in, say, a desert area versus a tropical area versus, I'm in Michigan, so I guess I'd call it maybe like a woodland area. I guess. I don't know. I'm in the city, so it's not a woodland, but if there were no buildings, it would certainly be a woodland type area. Whatever. I'm rambling now. So that's my thoughts on what you're going to need. And hopefully in this long rambling thing, there's some gems of useful information to help you get started, some things that you can think about. The main takeaway here is that I want you to just think about what you're doing and why you're doing it and where your focus is. And if that makes sense for your goals. I'm terrible at goal setting, apparently. I fail to meet my goals all the time, but I'm always moving forward. So hopefully you're better at goal setting than I am. And hopefully you are taking action to achieve those goals so that you can be victorious when the shit hits the fan. When the event happens. So, best of luck to you. And like and subscribe if this was helpful to you. Give me some feedback as always. And I will see you next time.